But coming in at number 10, it's actually Superman. We're just gonna get this one out of the way now. Yes, Superman is practically unstoppable. On one hand, you've got what is probably the strongest, most durable guy in DC with a heart of gold and a strong moral compass. He is basically a god to us, but he is also one of the very first real superheroes to show up in comic books. The benchmark for what makes a hero a hero. If it's not his massive amounts of power and his strong will that keeps him in the fight, then it's his massive popularity. When DC had the death of Superman story, there was absolutely no way that Superman was gone forever. We've seen stories where he not only takes over the Earth, but stories where the Man of Steel lives until the absolute end of the universe itself. His own stories suffered because of the fact that he's just unbeatable. He's so damn powerful that nothing was a real challenge for him. Superboy Prime, essentially Superman without weaknesses, was one of the largest threats in the multiverse, and he went toe-to-toe with a Dr. Manhattan powered up Batman who laughs. Now I'm putting Superman at number 10 because he's a golden boy and he bothers me in a similar way to Captain America. I'm sorry. In at number 9 though is Orion. Orion is a new god and the son of Darkseid, and as a hero with a dark ancestry, he is quite the conflicted do-gooder. He has many forms and he has many abilities. He exists beyond the normal multiverse on a higher plane of existence called the Sphere of the Gods. Born on Apocalypse but adopted by the new gods of New Genesis, Orion is in a constant war with his inner darkness and with his father, Darkseid. Orion is repeatedly praised and stated to be a warrior with skill and ferocity second to none. While undercover on Apocalypse, he was their greatest warrior and would have slaughtered their entire army during training. He has held open the hand of the god of strength and might, who is threatening creation and ripping holes in reality with that strength. He stands against and fights a sun-amped up Superman one-on-one, something no one else in the Justice League was able to do, and he can tank star system destroying explosions. Orion moves with the speed of thought. His intelligence was enough that he created the Genesis box, which can destroy and rebuild a universe. He can grow to any size he wants, move through time, has a healing factor, super senses, and wields the Astro Force, which does a hell of a lot on top of everything else, but as an example, it once sealed holes in reality and knocked out Superman in a single shot. And that's all just Orion holding back and not using his true power called the Source of the Beast. But I think we can agree Orion is a beast here. Coming in at number 8, Martian Manhunter. I think it's incredibly easy to overlook Martian Manhunter's incredible capabilities. Yes, he is more well known for being a telepath and a shapeshifter, but this guy packs a hell of a punch with the Martian abilities of phasing, Martian vision, and density alteration. Now, his probably most powerful form was when he became Furnace, completely negating his weakness for fire. But Furnace was a villain and therefore cannot really be on this list. But in DC 1,000,000, we get a John Johns who leads a war against Darkseid and gets him to surrender to the Source Wall, becoming trapped inside of it. The Source Wall, in return, gave John one wish. His wish was to become one with Mars, meaning John became a living planet while maintaining his multiversal telepathy and his genius intelligence. We don't get to see much of this version of John, but we can guess a lot of things about this version. Firstly, his weakness to fire is probably non-existent, because I mean, people gotta make fire on a planet just to survive. We can also probably assume John keeps his other Martian abilities to a degree, and there's also the possibility that the passage of time has increased those natural abilities considering he's defeated Darkseid. We can also assume he would now also have the powers that usually come with being a living planet, like weather manipulation and control of the elements. He can control the sands of Mars to an incredible degree to do crazy things, so there's that. But in at number 7, Swamp Thing. Alec Holland was a scientist who, much like some other scientists, turned superhero when he was caught in a disaster. For Alec, it was an explosion. When he jumped away from the explosion, Alec was bathed in the chemical vats of the Louisiana swamps, and his memories were absorbed into the being known as Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing is an immortal creature who fights to protect the planet from threats to nature, including many supernatural villains. The Swamp Thing has complete mastery over all forms of plant life, and through this power, he is in constant communication with the very essence of the earth, the green, and he serves as the plant elemental for the entire planet. In the past, Swamp Thing has gained access to other elemental powers, like at one point gaining control over earth, water, air, and fire, in addition to that of plant life. Theoretically, so long as there is plant life on planet Earth, Swamp Thing will always have a vehicle through which to house his consciousness, which makes him effectively immortal. He has basically revived himself countless times, just forming a new body out of plant life every time the current body can't keep going on, and he didn't even know he was doing this for the longest time. As a member of the Justice League Dark, Swamp Thing has been called on to help battle many supernatural threats over the years, and his recent TV show was hella underrated. Bring that shit back. Number 6. Captain Atom. Nathaniel Atom was transformed into Captain Atom in the 60s after being semi-forced to participate in a potentially fatal experiment sitting at ground zero of a nuclear explosion encased in an alien metal. Now, the explosion didn't actually kill him. What it did do was bond the alien metal to his flesh, giving him superpowers and throwing him 20 or so years forward into the present day. The alien metal gave him incredible abilities like flight, matter manipulation, energy manipulation, time manipulation, energy absorption, telepathy, spatial manipulation, quantum manipulation, force field creation, time travel, magic and mind manipulation, and control over the quantum field. These powers have let him perform some insane feats, like you can imagine, like creating a universe within the quantum field and later destroying that universe, fighting Superboy Prime, easily defeating a team composed of multiple versions of himself before absorbing them and creating an explosion powerful enough to destroy a universal space-time continuum. That was a lot. He is truly an insanely strong being, and I would be ashamed to not include him on this list. But coming in after that, number 5, Wally West. It almost feels rude to put Wally West here over Barry Allen, but in a lot of ways, Wally is arguably stronger than Barry is. Wally is the fastest of all the Flashes, only maybe rivaled by Barry himself, but Wally is arguably the fastest person that has ever existed. Just look at some of his feats. He was fast enough to easily break the barriers of speed and be the first person to enter the Speed Force. He was able to save and carry over 500,000 people 35 miles away from a nuclear explosion that had already detonated, including the people who are at ground zero, and he did it in only 0.0001 microseconds, which if you don't know is 1/100 billionth of a second. Do you know what that means? That means Wally West had to be moving at 13 trillion times the speed of light. He can move so fast that time itself appears to stand still. He was able to outrun death itself, for crying out loud. My favorite version of Wally West though is from the Kingdom Come Elseworlds story, where he becomes this being who is barely even tangible. He moves around Coast City, I believe, being at almost all places at the same time. He basically became the Speed Force. Wally West is absolutely broken. Number 4, Wonder Woman. Gifted with the powers of the gods, Wonder Woman has many of the same abilities that Superman has, including strength, speed, and durability. However, Wonder Woman's Amazonian training sets her a little bit apart as an amazing warrior. It's been debated for years whether Diana could beat Superman in a fight, and while she's shown to be capable of hurting him at the least, she doesn't have the same raw power. Instead, Wonder Woman dominates her opponents through a combination of her special abilities, superior tactics, and special equipment gifted to her by the gods. But she has been elevated beyond even that. When Diana was empowered with the World Forge and the anti-crisis energy at the end of Doom War / during Death Metal, she had enough power to shake stars and phase throughout time through sheer strength. She had displayed the ability to shrink an entire planet and was able to link everyone together and restore their memories as one history, as in of all DC's continuity. She had cosmic awareness, was able to see multiple events during the war against the Batman Who Laughs at once, as well as precognition and retrocognition. She was crazy powerful for that little bit of time. In at number 3 is Dr. Fate. Dr. Fate is like DC's Sorcerer Supreme. There have been a handful of people over the years who have taken on the name, slapped on the powerful Amulet of Anubis, Cloak of Destiny, and Helmet of Fate, and been an agent of the Lords of Order, who govern raw magic in the universe. Kent Nelson was the original one, given his powers by Nabu, one of the Lords of Order. Now without the powerful artifacts, Kent was given superhuman powers to make him more suitable for the Helmet of Fate, so he has telekinesis, flight, invulnerability, and superhuman strength. But when he has the actual helmet, his telekinesis has been strong enough to move an entire planet into the sun, which is just a wild level of power and shows just how much power the helmet grants its user. This ancient helmet is apparently the most powerful magical artifact the world has ever known. It's the source of the Dr. Fate identity, and while its power and the things it can do has changed in some small and not so small ways over the years, some of the things it has done include granting its wearer enhancements to their intelligence. It has given them elemental control over water, wind, earth, lightning, and fire. Of course, telekinesis, like I said, but also invulnerability, superhuman strength, magic sense, astral projection, clairvoyance, chronokinesis, dimensional travel, divination, eldritch blasts, energy constructs, force fields, healing, illusions, invisibility, magnetic field manipulation, hypnosis, molecular reconstruction, necromancy, resurrection, telepathy, teleportation, biofission, and then of course, divine empowerment. But you get what I'm saying, right? Number 2, Dr. Manhattan. John Osterman was a nuclear physicist who found himself trapped inside of an intrinsic field experiment chamber, which completely removed his intrinsic field, tearing him apart and completely vaporizing him. But over the next few months, he began to reform himself, starting as a disembodied nervous system, circulatory system, and then with a skeleton and muscles, and then finally, after trying multiple times, he appeared fully. Tall, muscular, hairless, and glowing blue. Now, John sees the past, present, and future all at once, but it's not just his perception of time. He even figured out how to see the timelines of others and even possible timelines. He is basically nigh omniscient with an understanding of the universe on a cosmic scale. It's hard to even describe what his powers actually are. His powers and knowledge give him the ability to travel through time, and he has completely fractured the timeline into infinite alternate realities existing in all of them at the same time, or simultaneously if that makes more sense. John possesses electrokinesis and elemental control, creating oxygen and water out of literally nothing. He perceives and understands things that no human brain could ever hope to. He has such a control over energy that he can even create life and accelerate evolution. He can manipulate matter to make himself and others intangible, alter his size, regenerate himself, disintegrate others, and cause molecules to accelerate and explode. His manipulation of space, time, and reality is what ultimately caused the New 52. He is a god in DC Comics. And finally, in at number 1, the Spectre. A lot like Dr. Fate and the Helmet of Fate, the Spectre isn't really one person. The Spectre itself is actually a cosmic entity and is the physical manifestation of God's vengeance on Earth. But this spirit, or entity, needs to be permanently bonded to a human soul in order to manifest itself. Jim Corrigan, a fallen Hal Jordan, and then Crispus Allen have been the main 3 humans to be the host for the Spectre. Now, being God's spirit of vengeance, you can probably guess that the Spectre is one hell of a capable being, and you're not wrong. Spectre has the power to do pretty much anything. The Spectre is nigh omnipotent. He has the capability to alter reality, literally erasing people from existence. He can alter his size to grow to any height. He can fire off mystical blasts of eldritch energy, and he has vast magical capabilities that allow him to cast spells to do pretty much anything else he wants to do. His wiki even says that his superhuman strength can, quote, be as strong as it needs to be, which I don't know why that matters. Kind of feels like a little pointless when he can literally alter reality and only be harmed by mystical and divine means, but yeah, just work here. The Spectre has infinite energy, has held apart 2 universes, can judge any reality in any dimension, and has the power to tear down heaven and hell. you can't really beat that.
Number 10, Iron Man. I mean, Tony is just a man, but he is still a very determined man, and he's willing to put everything on the line when it comes to saving the day or fighting for what he believes in. A few examples of this can be seen from both the comics and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Iron Man ends up being the one to wear the Infinity Gauntlet, snapping to defeat Thanos as the heroes make their final stand. He knows he won't survive this, but it's up to him in the end to save the day, and he's willing to give his life to stop Thanos and prevent him from once more erasing 50% of the universe's population with a snap. During Civil War in the comics, Iron Man also exhibits how committed he can be to a cause, when he believes the best way to prevent civilian casualties is by basically reigning in superheroes, having them register and in essence work for the government. His beliefs are so strong that while other heroes disagree with his methods, he is willing to go to war over it, starting the first civil war against the superheroes that disagree, who are led by a man who believes in freedom among all else and knows all too well what it's like to be a government pawn. Captain America's Steven Rogers. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we're doing here at Top 10 Nerd and you need more Marvel content in your life, be sure to check out our Top 10 Marvel playlist for that. Number 9. Doctor Strange. Even when Doctor Strange died, he didn't let that defeat him. In Death of Doctor Strange, Strange comes back to investigate his own death and solve his own murder. Well, a version of him does anyways. And the amazing thing is that he also seems to have left clues for his alternate self to solve the murder. In the end, when Clea attempts to call him back before accepting the role of Sorcerer Supreme as Doctor Strange's wife, Strange, however, says he cannot return because he knows what it will cost, and that it breaks basically laws of magic. Despite the fact that Strange is a hero who gets things done, he has also learned how to be unstoppably loyal to the rules of magic. This is probably because he is known to have broken these rules on a few occasions to varying degrees of success, I'd say. Sometimes it works, other times doing so only creates more problems, as we also see in Doctor Strange's journey in regards to his MCU stories and counterparts. In the MCU, Strange was willing to break some rules to help Peter get into school by making the world forget that he was actually Spider-Man. But due to Peter's constant add-ons in regards to who was actually allowed to remember, Strange lost control of that spell, splitting a crack in the multiverse. But alternatively, when facing off against the Scarlet Witch, he did allow himself to use an alternate copy of the Darkhold to dreamwalk in his own alternate universe's corpse, breaking several rules in order to defeat Wanda. Then again, he probably knew, like, this is like, I gotta break some rules here. I'm hoping it'll all work out in the end. I mean, I think Strange knew, like, I could do this and it'll be worth it. Number 8. Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel, aka Carol Danvers' whole motto is basically about being unstoppable. Higher, further, faster, baby. Well, it's about being unstoppable and of course, flying. Carol loves to fly. Even when an alternate version of her shows up on God Emperor Doom's battle world during Secret Wars, where she is given a life that she should seemingly love, this version of Carol becomes suspicious of Doom and ends up rebelling, questioning if what he tells her about the sky is actually true. This lines up perfectly with the type of hero Carol is in the main reality as well. During Secret Wars, the Captain Marvel of Earth 616 was one of the heroes on the Life Raft who had been preserved to the end of the multiverse and rebelled as well against Doom to try and reset the multiverse back to normal, which happens after Reed gets control of the Beyonders' powers, winning them back in a battle against Doom and using them along with the help from his family to rebuild the Marvel multiverse. Aside from that, Carol in the main continuity has also lost her memories multiple times and even died and been resurrected, and she hasn't ever let any of that stop her from doing what needs to be done in terms of heroics. Captain Marvel also happens to be one of the most powerful superheroes out there in Marvel Comics. She's got a ton of combat experience, military experience, pilot experience, and can survive in the vacuum of space. Number 7. Blue Marvel. Blue Marvel is one of the Superman-like characters that Marvel has to offer us. In fact, I would argue of the characters that we have in that category that are like DC Superman, he is one of the most underrated and often understated for how powerful he truly is. Adam Brashear, as he is known, is actually powered by antimatter, in essence becoming a living, breathing antimatter or negative reactor. The antimatter that he harnesses comes from the negative zone, which is why we might refer to him as a negative reactor as an alternate to an antimatter reactor. But he isn't a negative character, just the opposite. He is an amazingly powerful positive character, a superhero. Blue Marvel got his powers way back in the day and has actually been an active hero since the 60s in terms of the comics inner timeline. However, he didn't end up staying as one throughout his history due to the fact that he was black, with President John F. Kennedy heartbreakingly even asking him to retire from heroics because tensions were running high and America just wasn't ready for a black superhero at that time. Fortunately, they're ready now. Which is also great because we need a hero like Blue Marvel who isn't just unstoppable because of his nigh invulnerability, strength, and ability to manipulate energy, but also because he happens to be a super genius as well. And while some might take his temporary retirement as Blue Marvel giving up, really he was more just biding his time. A decade later he would once again return to heroics, joining the mighty Avengers of the 1970s, so he also wasn't out for really that long, fortunately. Number 6. Namor. While some might have more power than Namor behind their mighty fists, I would argue that Namor tends to be even more stubborn and determined a lot of the time. He isn't one to back down, and generally a good speech doesn't really cut it for making him stop whatever it is he's doing. Although he also probably wouldn't attack mutant kind since, you know, he is a mutant. But then again, if mutant kind did something to harm Atlantis, he might. Namor is a mutant, but first and foremost he is a ruler, believing in fighting for his people and their underwater nation. Case in point, when Krakoa first emerged and he was actually approached to join and acknowledge the country, but he decided to reject their offer to join the nation as a mutant. Although I imagine Atlantis would still recognize Krakoa, but I can't remember for certain if that's been mentioned in anything that I've read. Let me know in the comments if you know if Atlantis has acknowledged Krakoa yet. Namor is also in his own right a powerhouse, and while he might not be as well known for his strength as someone say like the Hulk, he also has shared a place on the Defenders team, with him proving how undeniably powerful he is to have earned that place. In fact, the Defenders remains one of the most powerful teams at Marvel, so typically anyone who makes the cut should be considered pretty OP. Number 5. X-Man. I mean, when you have the power of someone like X-Man, it's impossible for you to not be considered unstoppable. X-Man is a reality warping mutant and superhero. He's extremely powerful when it comes to telepathic abilities and telekinetic abilities. Although he isn't always operating on the side of, you know, straight up good, with his morals sometimes getting a little wonky, I would say, like when he thought that, you know, removing love from the world would somehow fix it. At the end of the day, he is generally trying to be a hero and do what he thinks is best. Nate Gray, as he's known, is not from the main continuity, but actually hails from the reality of Earth 295, aka the Age of Apocalypse, and then he kinda got like sucked into the main continuity. In the AOA reality, which stands for Age of Apocalypse respectively, he was created by that world's version of Mr. Sinister, known simply there as Sinister. However, Gray would escape Sinister and end up being raised by mutant hero and one of my fave mutants in general, Forge. So you know that Gray in general is going to act as a hero because he was raised by one of the best heroes, I'd say. When he did decide to take control of the world, becoming its god and shaping it into what he thought it should be, he was only threatened by basically all of mutant kind coming together to try and stop him. And even then, they failed. That was the only threat that he had, and he was like, well, dealt with that. Of course, while this all sounds kinda evil, becoming basically a tyrant and kinda conquering the world, this was actually done by Nate to fix the world, so it's not as bad as it sounds, really. He was like, look, I'm gonna die soon, and I feel like if I'm gonna die, I need to fix everything. So here I go, I'm gonna try to fix it. And then people were like, yeah, we don't really like when you try to just fix things, Nate. And he was like, okay, well, fair enough, fair enough. Number 4. Deadpool. Deadpool is so unstoppable, it's annoying. He has actively destroyed the Marvel universe before, killing everyone in it. He was so determined to escape a world that he no longer believed was real. Deadpool is also an immortal being thanks to his healing factor, and for a while thanks to the curse that Thanos put on him. Yeah, that's a true story. Deadpool was getting a little too cozy with death, and Thanos did not like that. That's because Thanos has always had a thing for Mistress Death, and is always trying to win her favor so that they can one day be together. Maybe one day. Thanos has an unhealthy obsession with death, I would say. So Thanos, when his potential future relationship status was threatened, decided to curse Deadpool so that he couldn't die, thereby preventing him ending up with Death and keeping the two of them apart. Deadpool for a while was human, and it was during this time that Wade Wilson became a lot more squishy, and I suppose stoppable. But even then, he didn't end up dying, but instead would be reverted back to getting his powers, going from handsome mortal Wade Wilson back to kinda ugly, unkillable Wade Wilson. Oh my gosh. When are we getting the Immortal Deadpool book, I wonder? That could be a whole book. Someone write that. Mortal Deadpool. Number 3. Magneto. I mean, Magneto literally kept himself alive through sheer willpower and massive control of his powers. I think that means he deserves his spot on this list. And for those who might think, yeah, but is Magneto a hero, Amanda? I would say that you could argue for him being on either side, really, hero and villain. Magneto throughout most of modern comics has been villain and hero, but he also kept his blood pumping without a heart to face off against Uranos, which was a heroic feat. So even if you perhaps disagree with my categorization of him on this list, I think you at least have to give him some hero props for doing that, and perhaps at least, you know, I would say a good amount of hero points. Hero points that Magneto has truthfully been racking up over the years, especially recently in the comics. After initially facing Uranos, Magneto was left for dead, which was a mistake on Uranos' part to assume this during the AXE Judgment Day event. As we've learned from Zombieland, you always gotta double tap, aka confirm that kill. It is important, especially if you're facing off against Magneto. Uranos did not follow this rule, assuming Magneto was dead after he took his heart, and as a result, Magneto came back to finish him. Magneto basically used his powers to keep his blood moving throughout his body by controlling the small bits of iron in his bloodstream to basically keep it pumping without having an actual organ to do it for him. Literally heartless Magneto, which sounds terrifying. Later, using all his strength and a power boost from Storm, Magneto was able to defeat the Eternal Villain before he passed away. But I'm sure he'll be back eventually because he is Magneto and he's a pretty great character, so. Number 2, Wolverine. I would say Wolverine is probably one of the most unstoppable heroes that we have over at Marvel Comics. He is a master tracker and is determined when it comes to defeating whoever stands in his way, or when it comes to saving the day. And even when he ends up being brainwashed and used as a weapon, he ends up not letting that stop him, at least not in the main continuity. Although in some of those alternate worlds, he definitely has been brainwashed to the point that he had to be put down. And by Kitty Pryde no less in one of them. Ugh, that hurts my heart. That being said, even in alternate worlds where he has become like Lord of the Vampires, he was able and willing to rise up to defeat his fellow evil brethren, even though he knew it would also mean his own death as well potentially. That's how determined Wolverine is. He's also virtually unkillable. Well, I guess unless you drown him. But even then, Wolverine has fallen into oceans and washed up miles off on another shore unscathed, so for a man that can still be drowned, I mean, he does pretty well to make it out alive of those underwater situations. Number 1, Hulk. I mean, we can't do a list like this and not talk about Hulk, am I right? The Hulk is not just a powerful hero, but he's also a stubborn and determined one. We've seen this shine through not just in his Hulk persona, but also as Bruce Banner before as well, but especially as the Hulk. Let's turn to World War Hulk as an example. In this story, Hulk was shot off planet by the Illuminati and ended up in Sakaar. He not only rose above being a gladiator, helping to lead a rebellion and an uprising, but after Sakaar was destroyed from a ship exploding, Hulk was determined to get back at those who had sent him there in the first place, and then later seemingly ruined his happiness, even though that isn't quite what happened, but that's what the Hulk thought happened, and that's all that really matters. He returns to Earth to get revenge on the Illuminati, and he proves just how deadly he can be. It also goes to show us why you really do not want to make the Hulk angry, because he might just squash you like a bug. He threatens the lives of some of the greatest heroes. When it comes to confronting even Professor X, Hulk manages to take on the mutants who come to his aid, and single-handedly does so, not being defeated by a physical show of power, but instead kinda by a speech about how the mutants, you know, don't really deserve his ire. When it comes to Bruce Banner, we've seen his unstoppable nature as is showcased in the recent Hulk series by Donny Cates and Ryan Ottley, where Bruce turns Hulk's body into his own spaceship, and his mind into the ship's engine, with Bruce remaining in control at the helm, which is pretty crazy. Also, I mean, Bruce kinda took on Thor in a fight at one point and was like, look, I might be Bruce Banner, but give me all the information about how the Hulk fights. I'm a smart guy and I can use that knowledge to basically face off with the Hulk. Number 10, Nightwing. I love Nightwing. Okay, so lately Nightwing has been using not only his vigilante persona, but also his everyday civilian identity of Dick Grayson to do whatever he can to help save the people of Bloodhaven. If that doesn't make him unstoppable, I don't know what could. Both an everyday hero as Dick Grayson, using an inheritance that he was given from his father figure and in essence other dad, Alfred Pennyworth, to save the city by attempting to reform it while also reclaiming it from corruption, and as a superhero, operating as Nightwing and fighting physically against criminals and those corrupted by crime to prevent them from getting in his way. As I see it, the only thing that might stop Dick Grayson, aka Nightwing, in the future is the very real threat of sleep deprivation. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd and you love hearing about unstoppable heroes, we got a playlist for you. It's called our Top 10 Most Powerful playlist, and it's got sort of a similar vibe throughout. Number 9. Batgirl. Batgirl is Barbara Gordon, although Babs at this point is known by multiple names and is no longer the only Batgirl either. Barbara Gordon, above all else, I would say is a survivor, and because of that I feel like I would be remiss if I did not include her on this list. Batgirl has had a weird history. A history that similarly seems to haunt many female heroes over at DC, with many of them having been nerfed in some way when it comes to their abilities or their power set. For Batgirl, this happened when she was fatally wounded, shot through the spine by the Joker, and as a result became paralyzed from the waist down. While technically told in an out-of-canon story, this aspect of the Killing Joke did become canonized for some reason. But did Babs let the trauma of this incident and her newfound disability stop her from fighting crime? No, she did not. She ended up reinventing herself as a master hacker, computer genius, and intelligence expert, known as the Mysterious and Unknown Oracle. Thanks to experimental medical tech, Babs is also now back to being Batgirl, as she can walk again, and even still fights crime from both sides, both on the streets and from behind the screen. Truly, she can do it all, making her a very difficult, if not entirely possible, superhero to stop. Number 8. Ghostmaker. Is Ghostmaker a superhero? Perhaps a reluctant one in terms of altruism, but most definitely one in terms of someone doing some actual good and heroic deeds. Even in his own greatest feat story that he recanted to Batman, Batman had a sense that there was more going on for Ming-Hua Khan than he let on in terms of why he was really after Madame Midas. And Batman was right. As was revealed in the final chapter of Ming-Hua's story, Madame Midas tied back to his origin and the real reason why he wanted to become a vigilante in the first place, which tied back to what happened to his parents many years ago. So although they are very different characters, it turns out that Ghostmaker and Batman also share a lot of intrinsic similarities. In terms of his unstoppability, have you read the story where he goes up against Madame Midas? If that isn't an example of someone who cannot be stopped, I do not know what is. You can find this story continued in parts at the back of Batman issues 107 through 111 from the current run of the series, with the final chapter at the center of the Batman 2021 annual issue. Number 7. Mr. Terrific. Mr. Terrific is someone who we don't really talk about enough. Something that I've always felt was kind of weird over at DC is there are a lot of heroes who are super strong and also heroes who are super smart, and in general, they tend to be the same people. In other words, their heroes really can do it all. Both brains and brawns for the most part. But when it comes to Mr. Terrific, he is really all brains. And while he might not sound quite as unstoppable as the heroes who can do it all, I still think he deserves to be acknowledged for his genius, especially as that's all he has at his disposal for getting things done. Mr. Terrific has been a part of the Justice League Reserves, but is more commonly known for his affiliation with the Justice Society of America. While known for being a skilled fighter as well, his primary ability is his genius level intellect, being considered the third smartest man on Earth after Batman and Lex Luthor. Number 6. Mr. Miracle. When we say unstoppable, it can mean a variety of different things, depending on, but when it comes to Mr. Miracle, we are undoubtedly interpreting unstoppable to mean someone who can basically never be held. Scott Free is Mr. Miracle. He was once known to be the son of High Father of New Genesis, but was exchanged to become the ward of Darkseid when he was young, in order to barter a ceasefire between Apocalypse and New Genesis. In exchange for Scott, Darkseid gave up his son, Orion, to go live on New Genesis. Orion definitely got the better deal between these two boys. Scott actually grew up severely mistreated by Granny Goodness, who is known for training Darkseid's forces, including some of his most fearsome and powerful warriors, his female Furies. Scott from a young age would find that he had a natural aptitude for escaping, and would hone this over the years, celebrating whenever he won a moment of freedom. Eventually he escaped, leaving Apocalypse and making his way to Earth. Mr. Miracle is considered the best escape artist in the world, and is even believed to be better at escaping than Batman himself, who is also known for pulling off many a daring escape. Number 5. Big Barda. Big Barda is another hero who often feels invincible in terms of her approach to heroism. Big Barda herself is a new god. She hails from Apocalypse, where she was once one of Darkseid's fearsome female Furies. While most born on Apocalypse are actually kinda like made in labs, selectively bred, Barda was actually born of love, something that makes her unique. While her mother's genes were intended to only be combined with others who would make the strongest and fiercest offspring, her mother, Big Burrito, one of Apocalypse's most fierce warriors, found a way to ensure that her first child was actually one resulting from love. However, once Darkseid found out, he took the child, placed her in the Gestatron, and then shipped her off to Granny Goodness. This is what makes Barda likely so inclined to heroics. Her father's seed was not chosen to match the traits that Darkseid most desired, and the power of love, as well as being a straight up badass, is also what generally compels Barda to be relentless when fighting for a cause she believes to be most just. Number 4. Plastic Man. Plastic Man is another completely unstoppable force over at DC Comics, even more so than some of the others on this list. This is because Plastic Man actually uses his stretching powers to be one of the coolest and most effective heroes around. We don't usually talk about him, but we should. Sure, he's not always the best guy, especially if we're talking about the New Earth continuity, but when it comes to heroics, there is almost nothing that can get in his way. He can get around any door thanks to his stretching powers and having complete molecular control over his body. He can manipulate his size, even impersonate other people by shapeshifting, and was even given duplication powers at one point, making him akin to like a really stretchy multiple man, which is pretty wild. Also, due to his elasticity, Plastic Man is super durable. He can't be torn apart and isn't super susceptible even to blunt force damage. The one thing he does seem to have a weakness to though, like most plastics, is extreme heat as well as chemical solvents, you know, like acid. Number 3. Power Girl. One of my favorite heroes over at DC is Kara Zor-El. She hails from the reality of Earth 2 and is the alternate version of Supergirl in that reality. Although I'm sure some fans like myself might even think of Supergirl as Power Girl's alternate. Gasp. Still, Supergirl was technically around for longer, so really Power Girl is the alt here if there is an alternate. But despite being herself like an alternate version, Kara is unique in the sense that she really is her own character. In fact, it feels weird for me to even be acknowledging her as an alternate even though technically she is that. Power Girl, like her cousin Superman, is a Kryptonian, and with her Kryptonian physiology also comes a ton of superpowers that put her on a similar power level to Supes himself. While in the previous iterations Power Girl did have a regrettable weakness to organic materials, meaning that sticks and stones could actually break her bones, after New 52 this was no longer a thing. Thank goodness. Number 2. Val-Zod. Val-Zod as Superman is probably one of the most powerful alternates that we have in the DC multiverse. Val-Zod, like Power Girl who came before him on this list, is another superhero from Earth 2. Val-Zod was another Kryptonian who landed on Earth following Superman and Kara Zor-El. And although in this reality there is a Superman on Earth 2, Val-Zod is still kinda like an alternate Superman because he's kinda got a bit of a similar story, although he's still also very much his own character, so kinda like Power Girl. Val-Zod managed to befriend Kara before Krypton was destroyed, and as a result was one of the lucky few to escape its complete decimation. He landed on Earth but was intercepted by a man named Terry Sloan, who ended up manipulating Val-Zod into helping him. Later, Val-Zod was sought out by the Wonders of the World, the premier Earth 2 superhero team. They wanted his help in fighting a bizarro version of Superman that was created by Darkseid. Despite being a pacifist, Val-Zod would eventually agree to help, as Kara could not bring herself to fight a version of her cousin. And at the time, I'm pretty sure everyone thought, you know, that was actually Superman, but you know, it wasn't. At that time, Superman was actually dead, having been killed by Darkseid. Val-Zod was not stopped by the Earth 2 Bizarro Superman, fighting him to reveal the truth, that this Superman was indeed a clone and not the true Kal-El. Number 1. White Lantern. Kyle Rayner has to be one of the most well-rounded Green Lanterns around, which is probably why he was such a great candidate when it came to him taking on the role of a White Lantern. Kyle Rayner as a White Lantern wasn't just a member of the White Lantern Corps, which combines all the colors of the emotional spectrum together, but the leader of the Corps at one point. He is considered to be a master of all the different colors of the emotional spectrum, which is also why he makes such a powerful White Lantern, and why he makes such a powerful pick for our list. When it came to the Blackest Night event, the White Lanterns were really all that could be used against the foes of that event. When the world was facing its end as a result of it, even Necron could not stop the White Lanterns from saving the day. While a lot of people like to hype Hal Jordan, and I would still say that, you know, Hal is pretty unstoppable for the most part, Kyle to me is the epitome of the most powerful Lantern, since he's not only a powerful Green Lantern, but also can really fit in basically any Lantern Corps, making him one of the most balanced and capable in terms of his connection to all of the emotions. I know people are gonna maybe disagree with me on that, that, but I encourage the disagreement. Let us discuss. Number 10, Beast. Beast is probably one of the most unstoppable characters at Marvel Comics right now. And while technically still a hero, so relevant to this list in terms of his classification between being a goodie and a baddie in general, he still has been up to some pretty questionable things in order to protect Krakoa, including basically turning Wolverine into a mindless slave. On the more optimistic side of Hank's history though, we also see an example of how unstoppable he can be in terms of his ability to seek out knowledge and never give up. After House of M, Beast for a good while was focused on finding a way to restore mutant kind and bring back the mutants they had lost in the aftermath, thanks to Wanda's reality warping magic. Hank tried everything from science to mysticism, but in the end was sadly unsuccessful. However, he still searched far and wide for a very long time, which I think should get him some unstoppable points. I think he also even created an organization just to figure that problem out, so yeah. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to show us that you love us by giving this video a thumbs up.
And at 9, Franklin Richards. Franklin Richards is the son of Reed and Sue Richards from the Fantastic Four, obviously. I don't feel like I needed to say it, but I still needed to say it. And even while currently or in the actual real present year of the comics, he's a toddler, he's still an absolute powerhouse, and I'm gonna count him, okay? Especially since the freaking Celestials have deemed this kid beyond Omega level on the scale of mutant-based powers. Cause you know, when a future version of yourself comes to your present and then manages to bend Galactus to their will, making Galactus Franklin's herald, I don't think there's much else that they can really do aside from just accept it. Hey, that's like 100%ing life. There's nothing you can do after that, which I think speaks for itself. This kid is able to tear the universe apart with a single thought, in essence, probably making him the scariest damn toddler on the face of the earth and the galaxy, aside from eventually when I have mine, because that will be the spawn of Satan. And that's also coming from someone who already thinks that toddlers are scary. Alright, you should have seen that one who was trying to stab me with safety scissors. That was a time. Gotta love Tuesdays. Also, according to the history of the Marvel Universe, the book, Franklin Richards is supposed to survive until the end of his universe and then pass on to the next one, like Galactus did, which is insane. Dude was born from a girl who can go invisible and a guy who can stretch. Jeez.
Number 8, Moon Girl. Friends, I just read the Moon Girl team up with the X-Men, which continues her journey on the hunt for Devil Dinosaur, who has been dino-napped, and it was way too cute, and I have to include her, so sorry but not sorry. Also, Moon Girl does not get enough love, and Luna Lafayette, she's pretty unstoppable, let's be honest. Not only does she succeed in rescuing Devil Dinosaur in her team-up series, and as such will be returning with her own series with her dino pal in tow, which I recently picked up the first issue of, although I haven't read it yet, but she also has solved problems that have stumped many genius level individuals in the Marvel Universe. Moon Girl was smart enough to find a way to almost single-handedly destroy the Terrigen Mists, when that threatened basically a war between the Inhumans and the mutants. I mean, granted, there were others who were kind of trying to puzzle it out before her and succeeding at least somewhat in that, but it was really Moon Girl that made the destruction of the Mists possible in the short time the heroes had left to rectify the conflict between the two sides. And while her instantly fixing Forge's work may have irked a lot of comic book fans, I will say it did show just how brilliant Moon Girl is, because Forge is literally one of the best inventors that we have at Marvel Comics in terms of his intellect and his know-how, so that just goes to show you basically how cool Moon Girl is. I don't really see it as a downside, but I understand. I love Forge too, so it is a little oh, my heart.
And at 7, Spider-Man. No matter what Spider-Man or Spider-Person you're referring to, none of them will ever be stopped in the grand scheme of things, alright? Not only is Peter alone an insanely resilient individual, but that's part of the whole Spider-Person identity. Getting back up no matter how many times you get knocked down or no matter how hard you hit the mat. Which is why Spider-Man is Marvel's most popular character, or well, one of the reasons. Which is yet another reason why he's unstoppable. Because why would Marvel end a character that is just making them mad bank? Spider-Man's introduction in essence resurrected the MCU in a time where people thought that Civil War was going to be lame, and now, seemingly, the driving force behind it, since the majority of the OGs have retired or were killed, or sacrificed themselves, or whatever. Spider-Man is a powerhouse in a ton of industries, and that plot armor is going to be more powerful than anything Tony Stark could ever make for him. Cosmic Spider-Man was awesome, and something I want to cosplay, but the plot armor is truly the most powerful version of this character. Plus, the whole thing where he has to actively pull his punches. because otherwise, you know, we'll have a whole Andrew Garfield situation. And then when he threatened the Kingpin, because, you know, if things had gone another way, nobody would have been able to stop him. He would have just I would have liked to see that though.
Number 6. Colossus. I mean, it's literally in Colossus's name at one point, hence why he has to make our cut and why he takes one of our top spots. Colossus is known for being the unstoppable Colossus in Marvel's Contest of Champions, but also in the comics during the Fear Itself event when he became the Avatar of Sidorak for a time, replacing Cain Marko. In fact, whenever Colossus is the Avatar of Sidorak, that's what we call him, Unstoppable Colossus, because Juggernaut is Unstoppable Juggernaut. And if you have his card in Marvel Snap, it is easy to see why we consider him to be so unstoppable just in general. Sorry, I'm obsessed with Marvel Snap lately, so it's probably going to be mentioned now and then in our videos. Even though we are not sponsored by Marvel Snap, to be clear, but we should be. I love that game. In Snap, Colossus's card ability is an ongoing. He cannot be moved, destroyed, or have his power reduced. And he comes by this card ability honestly, as even in the comics, Colossus is known for being an unstoppable force.
Halfway through into number 5, Archie Andrews. Okay, whoa. Hold on. Before you start raging at me in the comments, just please hear me out. I doubt anyone actually listened to that, but you know what? You may think that this is ridiculous and that I'm just trying to be a shit disturber. And while that is one of my favorite pastimes, Archie and the gang have actually been canon in the Marvel Comics since June of 1994. Archie Meets the Punisher is a one-shot comic and intercompany crossover written by Bat and Lash, and it was published jointly by Archie Comics and Marvel Comics and features the Punisher mistaking Archie Andrews for a criminal that he's been hunting. Then, when he realizes that he was wrong, he works with Archie to rescue Veronica after she had been kidnapped. And you know what? Since Archie has been a superhero multiple times in his comics, this instantly makes Archie a canon Marvel superhero. But with the comics being used as a plot device as well in Riverdale Season 6 to explain their multiverse, well, those would also by proxy be canon, meaning that Archie, being another Marvel Superman but with a weakness to palladium instead of to kryptonite, is a thing. Until they got rid of his weakness. Yeah, that was also a thing. Yeah, that's a pretty unstoppable hero if you ask me. He can't fly, but I mean, again, plot armor.
Number 4. Storm. On part 1 of this list, I talked about how Magneto was unstoppable after Uranos' invasion. How even after seemingly being killed, Magneto just got back up. Well, he wouldn't actually have been able to keep going if it wasn't for Storm and their weird, kinda sexy team up in their fight against Uranos. But this isn't the only time that Storm has become unstoppable. There are a few others that stick out in my memory. There is the time that she was infected by the Children of the Vault's technology, which threatened to overtake her body like a virus. This happened actually pretty recently, within the last few years. Her brush with the deadly tech left Storm comatose, temporarily, until she was revived by the combined efforts of Jean Grey and Emma Frost in their own giant-size X-Men comic, which they shared together. However, Storm was still very unwell after this and left with an estimated 1 month to live. While Krakoa has the capacity to resurrect any fallen mutants, or anyone else that they feel so inclined to bring back at this point, Storm refused to take this easy way out. She would not just lay down and surrender to death. Why? Because Storm is a badass, that's why. And also I think because she felt it undermined the value of life to do so, which she was not here for, and honestly, I want to back her up on that one. Instead, Storm attempted to fight back against the infection, venturing into the often bigger on the inside lab known as the World in her own giant-size issue in an attempt to find something that might help her. Storm and her teammates did succeed in this, separating the virus from Storm and restoring her health, and proving that even in the face of death, Storm generally refuses to back down.
Getting close to the end in number 3, Squirrel Girl. Okay, I mean, there's a whole series called The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, so I think that you kind of deserve to be on the list. The solo series debuted in January of 2015 and ran for 8 issues and was relaunched in October of 2015 as part of Marvel's all-new, all-different Marvel branding and was published through to November of 2019 with 50 issues for a total of 58. Both series were written by Ryan North, but in issue number 4 of volume 1, Squirrel Girl literally stops Galactus from coming after Earth by being friends with him. I mean, come on, you're literally unable to sit there and tell me that this doesn't make her deserving of this list. Bro, she didn't even have to fight him, for God's sakes. It's actually insane, dude. She just talked the Devourer of Worlds into not going after Earth. Plus, I know that you all love Squirrel Girl, okay? I may not have been here for a while, okay, but I know that much. I also know that saying anything against the Hulk will get me mean DMs for 3 years, but hey, at least you love Squirrel Girl. And honestly, after reading this issue, I have to say I agree. It's pretty freaking nuts. Yes, I made the pun, alright? You were all waiting for it, I hope.
Number 2, Punisher. The Punisher truly is a man who never backs down. I mean, we even see this bizarrely enough reflected in his interaction in the comics with Archie Andrews, who was also on this list. Punisher is willing to venture kind of into a totally different world in order to apprehend a criminal. And he succeeds, after of course mistaking Archie for the criminal, but that of course is easy to do when you consider how similar he looks to the man that Punisher was after. Punisher is so committed to catching the evildoer, he resorts to food fight tactics. And for Frank Castle, who often prefers to fight with guns, you better bet that's commitment. That's unstoppable when you're willing to throw a cake at someone.
And finally, in at number 1, Scarlet Witch. Considering how the entirety of House of M is meant to be about how she changed reality, I think it's fairly safe to say that she's a powerful hero, even if she isn't a hero all the time. Like in Multiverse of Madness, for example, when she somehow was able to send demons and monsters across different dimensions to attack America Chavez, but couldn't just go to those dimensions herself. Even if she was a villain in this scenario, she was still able to take on the Illuminati from their universe and beat them all fairly easily, proving that not only is she an extremely powerful mutant, whether she's on either side, but also that falling boulders can kill a Captain Marvel, and are also therefore the most dangerous obstacle or weapon in the Marvel universe. The only limit to Wanda's abilities in any incarnation really is her brain, which is like my one gripe with Multiverse of Madness, since her whole point of taking America's powers for herself was in case her kids got sick and died again. But like, you've turned a whole city into your own personal TV show and brought your dead Infinity Stone powered boyfriend back for it. So I think you can handle a little chicken pox if your sons get caught or get whatever you think they're gonna get in whatever universe, but that's also a way for them to explain why she didn't do it, since the movie was all about setting up the premise of incursions. But either way, come on, Scarlet Witch, yeah, it's the thumbnail, I think. I don't know, I actually don't know.
Coming in at number 10 is Captain America. No, Captain America is not near the top of the power hierarchy of Avenger heroes. Not by a long shot. But it's not his power that makes him unstoppable. It's his willpower. Captain America just never gives up or backs down when he believes in what he is fighting for. This is one of the big reasons that Steve Rogers has been the leading man of the Avengers. That and his genius tactical mind and his leadership skills. Almost all the Marvel heroes and even some of the Marvel villains will shut up and listen when Captain America speaks, even when those heroes and villains are leagues and bounds above Steve in terms of their power. In addition to all that, Captain America is one of the longest lasting and most popular of the Marvel heroes, and that fact also lends him some points in the unstoppability factor on the publishing side of Marvel heroes. But on top of all of that, Captain America is one hell of a fighter and is incredibly tough with his super soldier serum, bringing him to the very tippy top of the human conditioning and making him a physically perfect human, which has allowed him to withstand some pretty brutal attacks, being frozen in ice for decades, and has virtually stopped his aging. And at number 9 is Spider-Man. Just like Captain America, Spider-Man has the absolute god level of power known as popularity. He is essentially the face of Marvel Comics, and almost everyone who just knows of comic books knows of Spider-Man. Sure, Spider-Man has been defeated and even lost his life, like how he is technically currently not alive, but he always comes back, and there is a very low possibility that he will ever be brought down for good. Plus, now we have Miles Morales as well, who is going to share this spot on the list, even if he's got a few abilities that Peter doesn't have. Spider-Man has got more than popularity though. He is also very inspiring, actually really strong, and incredibly intelligent. He is seen and respected as one of the most righteous and brave heroes around, and his heroic attitude, sense of responsibility, almost perfect moral compass, and quick wit make him beloved by not only fans but other heroes and even some villains. But above all of that, it's his willpower that I think makes him truly unstoppable. Even in the face of certain deaths, Spider-Man will always get back to his feet, which has allowed him to use his incredibly incredible abilities to perform truly incredible feats. Speaking of his powers, Spider-Man possesses the proportional powers of a spider, but he's done things that even a human-sized spider would not be able to do, and his spider sense gives him an edge in battle, and that, combined with his other abilities, has made him next to unstoppable. And at number 8 is Luke Cage. Criminal turned unstoppable superhero is quite the feat, but Luke Cage handles that with grace, becoming a pillar of his community and even eventually becoming mayor of New York itself. Whenever I think of Luke Cage, the word unstoppable is what actually comes to mind. I just think of him as this big brick wall just standing in the way of anyone who would try to harm another person. Luke went through a super soldier experiment known as the Burstein process, which increased his cellular regeneration rate. This means that Luke was given a level of super strength that, with training and experience, has made him strong enough to lift 50 tons. But there have been times where he exceeded this, and his strength lets him perform thunderclaps, leap incredible distances, and he's even been able to grab onto the back of an aeroplane and force it to come to a complete stop. Alongside his strength, he was obviously given superhuman stamina to match, but what most know him for is his nigh invulnerability. Luke's skin, muscles, and bone tissue is about as hard as titanium steel, making him basically immune to bullets and blades. He can withstand hits of around 1 ton and blasts of 150 pounds of TNT, but those numbers wax and wane depending on the story. He has taken hits from people far stronger than himself and survived falls from 90 stories. If Peter Parker is the heart of New York City, Luke Cage is the bulwark. And at number 7 is Wolverine. Of course, an overly aggressive and angry Canadian will make this list. An angry Canadian is already such a rare occurrence that they have to be pretty strong, and Wolverine definitely is. Most people are well aware of Wolverine's abilities thanks to Hugh Jackman, but I am honor bound to explain them anyways. There are 2 things that make Wolverine practically unstoppable. The first would be his adamantium lace skeleton and by extension his claws. While not a natural occurrence, Wolverine was subjected to the Weapon X program, and for him, he was given the adamantium which bonded to his skeleton, infusing it with his bones, which makes them virtually unbreakable. It also makes his claws razor sharp and gives him added weight and velocity when throwing punches and kicks. Now, if someone were to ever break his bones, which is pretty much impossible, it wouldn't really matter because one of his natural mutations is a healing factor that is only outmatched by a few other characters in the Marvel Universe. His healing factor has allowed him to survive a nuclear explosion, being completely crushed by a steamroller, having his heart torn out, brutal and bloody fights with Sabretooth. He has even recovered from a single drop of blood, but he was being powered up at that time. His skeleton and his healing factor are just compounded by incredible senses, superhuman attributes, and general tough guy attitude to make him a pretty unstoppable member of the Avengers and more. And at number 6 is Ghost Rider. Everybody loves Ghost Rider. Doesn't matter who it is, a flaming skull and a flaming mount is just always cool. But not only is he really cool, he's quite a hardy fella. He is essentially impervious to almost all forms of normal damage, or the damage he has sustained, like having his head completely obliterated, didn't actually matter since he just instantly reformed it and didn't even feel it. The Ghost Rider has tanked hits from the Hulk on multiple different occasions and was one of the main heroes called in when Hulk returned for his vengeance on the Illuminati. Since his body becomes a flaming skeleton, most projectiles just pass straight through him or bounce off of his incredibly strong bones. The only things that have ever been shown to actually hurt him are heaven-forged or blessed weapons. Also, because of the divine or demonic energies that empower him, he can basically feel no fatigue or pain of any kind, and if anything were to actually damage him, he can recover from his injuries insanely quickly, almost instantly. But all that combined with his hellfire, soul, and sim manipulation, demonic magic, fallible penance stare, and other insane abilities makes Ghost Rider someone who most villains, and even heroes, fear even on their best days. At number 5 is Carol Danvers. Whether you love or hate Carol Danvers, there is no denying this energy-wielding superhero is an absolute powerhouse. Carol was the head of security at NASA when she was accidentally subjected to the Psyche Magnetron machine, which imprinted her with energy from Mar-Vell's Kree negabands. This basically means she was given superhuman strength that allowed her to support the weight of a dead celestial, super stamina that lets her exert herself for 24 24 hours before getting tired, superhuman durability to withstand planet-destroying explosions, superhuman agility and reflexes that are next to instant, a regenerative healing factor that exceeds Wolverine's and can be extended to others, self-propelled flight at 3 times the speed of sound, even in the vacuum of space, and flash precognition that allows her to randomly subconsciously anticipate the moves of her opponents. But all of this is somewhat secondary to what is arguably her main power, the ability to control, absorb, and manipulate energy of a whole bunch of different kinds. This extends to let her project her spirit, manipulate molecules, and transmute matter. She can create energy constructs and even boost up her already OP abilities. And at number 4 is the Hulk. It's almost a requirement that the Hulk show up on this list. The gamma-powered Green Goliath has been around for a long time, and ever since he showed up, there are only a small handful of people who have ever been able to stop him without using some kind of magic or reality warping. His infinite strength has a lot to do with that. A strength that grows based on his anger and has never ever really reached a cap, allowing him to destroy entire planets, be a threat to entire galaxies, and being able to shake the multiverse with his punches. It also has a lot to do with his basically limitless dynamic durability, which has allowed him to survive attacks from enchanted weapons, powerful blasts of energy, stronger than ground zero nuclear explosions, the Human Torch's Nova Blast, and he could stand up to forces that could crush adamantium and destroy entire planets. But now, thanks to Immortal Hulk, we know that the Hulk actually literally cannot die, coming back from the below place through green doors. Actually, in that story we even get to see an alternate future where the One Below All uses the Hulk to destroy literally everything in existence. And the Hulk is still showing more and more of his potential, with the reveal of the Titan personality that was able to fire energy blasts and is utter nightmare fuel. And at number 3 is the Scarlet Witch. As a natural conduit of one of the most powerful forms of dark magic, chaos magic, the Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff, is one of the most terrifyingly powerful beings in Marvel Comics. Using her chaos magic, Wanda has the very powerful ability to alter reality, which she has used to create her own children, bring the Avengers to their knees and even completely end a few of them, and even rewrite all of reality to make mutants the dominant species for a while before wiping a ton of them out. When she was born, Wanda had a natural affinity for magic. Now this was boosted up by the gift, or curse, of chaos magic given to her by Chthon, the old god of chaos, which was then boosted up again by the experiments of the High Evolutionary at Wundagore Mountain, which gave her an even deeper connection to magic. She can channel energy from other dimensions and from entities like Chthon, Sidorak, and Morrigan, and is considered to be the nexus being of the universe. Most magic users could make this list, but few of them can do what the Scarlet Witch can do. And at number 2 is Thor. Thor, Odin's son, the Asgardian god of thunder, is one of the most powerful heroes on the Avengers roster. Whenever anyone talks about Avengers level threats, one of the key elements of that is whether Thor can handle the situation alone. In both the comics and the MCU, Thor and the Hulk are repeatedly given reasons to not be able to show up so that certain storylines can actually be compelling. Specifically, I'm talking about Civil War, where Thor had to deal with Ragnarok back home on Asgard, and that was all because if he was on Earth during Civil War, whoever had him on their side would automatically win. Being the son of Odin the Allfather and Gaia, an old god, Thor has all the incredible powers of the Asgardians, but boosted to a whole other level thanks to his mom. As the god of strength as well as thunder, he is one of the strongest Marvel characters, being able to either defeat or stalemate astronomically strong beings like the Midgard Serpent, the Hulk, the Silver Surfer, Gladiator, and Hercules. His stamina lets him basically fight forever, and he's next to completely invulnerable. Not to mention his weather and energy manipulation and the use of his hammer. Even when he isn't in the possession of his hammer though, and is just Thor Odin's son, he is still a force to be reckoned with, and, especially recently, he keeps getting more and more power boosts, like when he was Rune King Thor, or now that he's Allfather Thor, which gives him the Thor Force, and he's gone even beyond that when he became the Herald of Galactus. There's a lot more to Thor, but I think I've said enough. And finally, finally, in at number 1 is the Sentry. With the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns, Robert Reynolds, the Sentry, is not just another Marvel version of Superman. In my opinion, he is even cooler than Superman, and you can get at me in the comments for that. The Golden Sentry Serum gave Robert Reynolds more than just the highest level of strength in the universe, the ability to move and fly faster than the speed of light or just straight up teleport, and near invulnerability. The Sentry also has molecular manipulation abilities that have allowed him to defeat the Molecule Man, photokinesis which allows him to shine brighter than the sun, turn completely invisible, and produce blasts of light from his hands and eyes that could burn the Hulk's skin and level whole city blocks. He also has psionic abilities that he uses to hold himself together, implant his memories in others, erase memories, and stop the Hammer of Thor. He also has biokinesis abilities that have let him heal others, resurrect himself, reconstitute his molecules, and as the Void, give others cancer. Speaking of the Void, that is a whole other dark side to this hero that is intrinsically tied to his existence, which is not only incredibly powerful in its own right and makes the hero 10 times more interesting, but when the Sentry combined with the Void, this godlike being somehow got a huge power boost. And in at number 10 is Superman. We are kicking off this list with what everyone would expect to see, because it's just not interesting to have him any lower. That's my reasoning and I'm sticking to it. Superman is the baseline. He is what we compare almost all other DC superheroes to when we are talking about power. Superman at his base level can destroy planets, tank hits from just about anyone including Darkseid himself, and he has a whole plethora of abilities that some are even forgotten when writers use Superman in a story. But the thing about Superman is that he almost has no upper limit. If this guy wants to, he will fly into not only our sun but multiple suns throughout the universe to drink up their radiation in order to gain a massive power boost. He's been able to break the barrier between dimensions, and in some stories he has existed until the very end of the universe, splitting himself into multiples so that he can be a hero for the entirety of that universe, although that wasn't technically canon. The point is, while he is arguably without equal because of the fact that he has no real limit, there are a few members of the League who could give him a run for his money. In at number 9, Shazam. With the mystical power of 6 gods, Shazam is not just said to be the physical equivalent to a baseline Superman, but he can almost definitely take on Superman himself, as the Man of Steel has no resistance to magic. Shazam has actually proved himself to be faster than and also able to knock out Superboy Prime, who is one of the most powerful versions of Superman ever, able to shake reality with punches, that kind of thing. But this isn't a list about people who can take on Superman. Batman has stated that Shazam is one of the most powerful beings on planet Earth for a reason. He has KO'd the god of evil and father of Darkseid, Yuga Khan, with one punch. And speaking of gods, Shazam has been able to defeat the DC versions of Ares, Atlas, and Thor, all of whom are incredibly powerful gods. While he is astoundingly strong, fast, and durable, Shazam's true potential, I think, comes from his natural affinity for magic, which can potentially allow him to do almost anything, which I know to be true because of another magic-wielding leaguer. Number 8, Zatanna. A lot of people sleep on Zatanna, and that's a mistake. Zatanna is part of the Homo Magi race, giving her a genetic talent for magic that makes her one of the greatest magic users in the multiverse. Zatanna was born with magic, but she's not limited by that. With the addition of learned magics, Zatanna can cast a whole multitude of spells that allow her to do things like travel dimensions, summon objects and beings, perform telekinesis and advanced telepathy, redirect and return attacks, mess with the weather or even time of day, manipulate her own size or transform into basically anything, become intangible, and manipulate magical versions of the elements. But that's all the basic stuff. She can cast spells that can manipulate reality, alter the molecular structure of objects, and move forward, backwards, and freeze time itself. And that's not even getting into what she could do with black magic. Sure, she may not be as physically capable as some other characters on this list, but she has the potential to make child's play of most of them despite that fact. If you guys are enjoying this list so far, make sure to drop a like and subscribe here at Top 10 Nerd, and make sure to let us know any topics for videos you want to see in the future. But coming in at number 7 is Wonder Woman. As 1/3 of DC's Trinity, Wonder Woman has to make this list. Where Superman is a being of raw power, that, plus his outstanding moral character, are what makes him so unstoppable. But then we have Wonder Woman, who is almost equal in terms of strength, speed, and durability to the Man of Steel, but she's leagues and bounds above the guy in terms of her skill. In a melee fight, she will outmatch pretty much anyone, and she will be quicker than almost anyone, including Superman, because she doesn't even need to think when fighting. She's just a natural. I don't think we can actually show it, but my favorite Wonder Woman panel, which I think comes from Injustice, is literally her snapping Superman's arm using her elbow while he screams in pain and Harley Quinn is in the background like rooting her on. It's fantastic. But even in regular continuity, she's been able to last a hot minute against a mind-controlled Superman who was not holding back, and she could have even taken him down if she wanted to. And then we talk about Death Metal, where Wonder Woman got powered up to the point she was taking on beings of cosmic levels of power using a magical chainsaw. Then she went on to Valhalla, of all places, but even managed to get out of there and come back to Earth. And that's the other thing. Wonder Woman has access to not only magical artifacts, but she was gifted with magical abilities by the goddess Hecate, or however you pronounce that. And those powers were leagues above Zatanna's own magical prowess. And we've already talked about how powerful magic can be. There isn't much on Earth that can really stand against Wonder Woman. And at number 6 though is Green Lantern. I think a lot of the time Green Lantern is just thought of as the guy who can make breakable green light constructs, but that is just a huge oversimplification. To prove my point, all we gotta do is look at some of the things done by the most powerful Green Lantern, Hal Jordan. Hal is essentially pure willpower, which is what powers his Green Lantern ring. This means he has incredibly intense levels of strength and durability, but anything he does with his ring is just better than any other lantern. And that's before he even forged his own ring, which no other Green Lantern has ever done. Hal has such control over his ring that he has been able to pull a spaceship out of the gravitational pull of a star, but he has also used the ring to attack nanites inside his own bloodstream. He can destroy entire planets, one-shot KO Superman, hit people so hard that it warps reality, and then as most people know, he destroyed every single member of the Green Lantern Corps. Now after creating his ring, he was even more powerful than that. He literally started to become a being composed of will, which doesn't even really make sense, but means he can't really die. He obliterated Sinestro, who was powered up by Parallax. He moved so fast he broke the Speed Force barrier, tanked a massive blast from Mogo, who was a Green Lantern that's a planet, and Mogo was being boosted up by hundreds of other lanterns when that happened. And he created hard light constructs that were actually alive and couldn't be beaten by the Green Lantern and Sinestro Corps combined. Absolutely insane. And at number 5 is Martian Manhunter. John Johns is another character that people really sleep on, but this guy is insane with his level of ability. There's a panel from the New 52 when Martian Manhunter is fighting off all the members of the Justice League at the same time. Let me break this down. With his left hand, Martian Manhunter is displaying his shapeshifting abilities, turning into a massive spiky club and whacking away both Cyborg and Hal Jordan Green Lantern. With his right hand, I think it's safe to say he's showing off his super strength, as he's got a power grip on the lasso of truth, and I'm assuming he's resisting its power, which is just a whole feat on its own. Behind him is Aquaman, who's like jabbing at Johns with his trident, but this is just going through the Martian Manhunter and is showing off his intangibility powers. And then we got Superman, who's flying around the fight at a decent distance away, while Manhunter is using his heat vision to keep him there. And then the funniest part is Batman doing absolutely nothing, just picking up the Flash, who seems to have just been knocked down. It's almost a perfect display of his abilities, but leaving out a handful, and one of the biggest. John is the most powerful telepath on Earth, and one of the most powerful in the universe. Martian Manhunter has been called the most powerful being on the planet, and he's at the top of the list of people that Superman is afraid to fight. That's enough said right there. Number 4, Orion. Orion is a new god and the son of Darkseid, and as such he's not only incredibly conflicted, but also incredibly powerful. He has many forms and he has many abilities. Orion is repeatedly praised and stated to be a warrior with, quote, skill and ferocity second to none, which allowed him to become the greatest warrior on Apocalypse while he was undercover there. He is so astronomically strong that he has held open the hand of the god of strength and might, who had been threatening creation and ripping holes in reality with that strength. And he has stood against and beaten a sun-charged Superman one-on-one, something no one else in the Justice League was able to do. His durability is so powerful that he can tank star system destroying explosions. Orion is so fast that he moves with the speed of thought, and he's so smart that he was able to create the Genesis box, which can destroy and rebuild a universe. He can grow and shrink to any size, move through time, has a healing factor as if he actually needed one, has incredible super senses, and wields the Astro Force, which does a hell of a lot on top of everything, including matter and energy manipulation. But as an example, it once sealed holes in reality and knocked out Superman in a single shot. And that's all just Orion holding back and not using his true power called the Source of the Beast. And yet, he flies around space on a stupid looking scooter. And at number 3 is The Flash. Okay, look, I gotta tell you now that I'm actually gonna be talking about Wally West here. It's pretty well known that Wally is even faster than Barry Allen is, and I'd argue that he is the fastest speedster anywhere. In Flash Forward, Wally somehow went, quote, faster than the Speed Force, which means he went faster than the source of his own super speed. That makes no freaking sense! He can outrun Superman and Barry Allen. He outran the Black Flash, which is basically death, taking it to the end of the universe where it just ceased to exist. He has saved the Titans, who are all over the US, and he did it in 6.25 seconds. And my favorite point, there was a time that he saved the whole population of a city from a nuclear explosion as that explosion was going off, and he did it at like 1 billion times the speed of light. How does that even make sense? It doesn't. That's your answer. Wally West is insane. He can manipulate the Speed Force to make time basically irrelevant to himself, and he might as well just be classified as a god. Number 2, Firestorm. Where do we start with Firestorm? The main version of the character is Ronnie Raymond, who was fused with his professor Martin Stein. But there are a lot of other versions of Firestorm, a lot of whom are either one person or different fusions of people. It's annoyingly complex. The character, as you might guess, has pyrokinetic abilities plus durability, flight, reflexes, and super strength, but the character's main thing is that they can rearrange the molecules of matter. Now this ability is obviously incredibly OP, and it would simply take one story to make him completely god level, but for the most part, writers kind of misuse him. Potentially, this character could transform entire planets into whatever he wanted. With his powers, Firestorm's done some pretty godlike things. For example, Firestorm manifested a pink bunny mascot suit out of thin air around the villain's Skull Crusher. He's turned explosives into a jack-in-the-box and a cement truck into a giant teddy bear. It's hilarious, but like low-key, absolutely insane. On a way less hilarious note though, he also turned a girl into salt when he was resurrected as Deathstorm, and in Doomsday Clock, Firestorm accidentally turned a crowd of Russian protesters into glass. But outside of matter manipulation, Firestorm has had some impressive feats, like surviving the nuclear meltdown that originally created the hero and absorbing all the excess radiation, and then another time, Firestorm survived a straight-on nuclear explosion. An alternate version of the character called Deathstorm was able to absorb and capture 3 different Justice League teams into its Firestorm matrix, allowing the crime syndicate to take over Earth for a period of time. And in Infinite Crisis, Firestorm was able to seal a multiversal rift. Now in case you haven't noticed, we have kind of moved away from physically unstoppable characters to characters that are just pure science fiction gods. In at number 1 is Captain Atom. Nathaniel Atom was transformed into Captain Atom in the 60s after being semi-forced to participate in a potentially fatal experiment, piloting a device encased in an alien metal. Now the experiment didn't kill him. What it did do was atomize him and bond the alien metal to his flesh, giving him superpowers. Captain Atom's powers are like Firestorm's powers, but boosted to a whole different level, and with many more side abilities. Matter manipulation, energy manipulation, time manipulation, energy absorption, telepathy, spatial manipulation, quantum manipulation, force field creation, magic and mind manipulation, and control of the quantum field are all on this guy's roster of abilities. These powers have let him perform some insane feats like creating and destroying whole universes, fighting Superboy Prime, easily defeating a team composed of multiple versions of himself before absorbing them and creating an explosion powerful enough to destroy a universal space-time continuum. Captain Atom is potentially the most powerful superhero, certainly the most powerful who is also a member of the Justice League. Number 10, Constantine, or Constantine, or whatever you want to say. John Constantine is a really fun inclusion for this list because he is extremely powerful and not powerful at all at the same time. John can wield magic for sure through years and years of learning, training, traveling, but he doesn't have any kind of magical affinity or any kind of beneficial magical family heritage. John relies on actual magic as a very last resort, and the magic he knows how to use isn't anything to scoff at. He has even, very momentarily, been able to hold back Dr. Fate, but using magic comes at a cost and he knows this. So what Constantine prefers is trickery. Lies, deceit, traps, his wits, weapons, artifacts, backup, and calling in favors. John smokes. He drinks, he's in his middle ages, and he ain't in the greatest of health. He can throw a punch for sure, but most people are a physical match for him. But at the same time, he has been able to trick, outsmart, or overpower gods, demons, and angels, Batman, Superman, Darkseid, Swamp Thing, Dr. Fate, the Phantom Stranger, the Spirit of Justice, the Spectre, who's the Spirit of Vengeance, Lucifer, and even the Presence, who is basically DC's version of God. He tricked the Presence into curing John of cancer and granting him divine protection by selling his soul to 3 separate Hell Lords who would start a civil war over his soul, which would spill out onto Earth and into heaven. You don't sleep on this bad-mouthed middle-aged man. Number 9, I, Vampire. In comparison to most of the other characters who have made this list, Andrew Bennett as a vampire is kinda squishy. Vampires are practically indestructible and can regenerate any damage done by consuming blood. They have superhuman strength, speed, reflexes, stamina, can transform into bats, wolves, rats, and mist, and have enhanced senses and a bit of psychokinesis. But despite that, they have some major weaknesses that pretty much everyone is aware of, with a big one being the frickin' sun, unless they can find a way to temporarily make themselves immune. But for I, Vampire, he has a peculiar ability to eventually automatically revive himself after he is killed, even if he becomes a pile of ash from the sun. He has even survived the end of the universe. Now, this ability is a bit of a mystery even to Bennett himself. When he survived the end of the universe, it was at the will of the Presence, leading some to believe that this may be true in all cases, but that's not actually confirmed. The point here is that he is literally unstoppable because he will always just come back. Is it cheating? I don't know, maybe, but if it is, then our next spot absolutely is cheating. Number 8, Deadman. While I, Vampire, will come back from the dead every time, Deadman is already dead, and therefore pretty much can't be touched except by magical artifacts, or magical beings, but even then he can usually give them a good beating. Boston Brand is a ghost. Sorry. Giving him some pretty limited abilities like intangibility, flight, and invisibility, plus a little bit of dimensional travel, which is a bit more useful. But where he truly becomes powerful is in his ability to possess other people. Now, of course, this ability isn't always reliable because there always needs to be some kind of challenge to nerf an ability like this. Batman, for example, is a struggle because of his incredibly strong mind, and there are a lot of strong-minded individuals in comic books. Plus, he can't control people who have already been hypnotized or who are immune to being possessed, like the Spectre. But there are still quite a few extremely powerful characters who he could potentially, and has, possessed. Judy Moon, the Enchantress, Swamp Thing plus the Green, Pantheon, who is an elder god, and the multiversal entity known as the House of Mystery have all been possessed by Deadman. But there's no reason he couldn't possess Superman, Wonder Woman, and a large variety of other heroes and villains. Number 7, Animal Man. Thanks to an encounter with some rather strange aliens, Bernard Buddy Baker gained access to the morphogenic field, otherwise known as the Red. This field basically allows Buddy to absorb and use different attributes of nearby animals while still being a human. So he has been able to move his eyes independently like a chameleon, he's been able to ram against a speeding car with the abilities of a rhino, he can fly by tapping into birds, he's regenerated a whole lost limb by tapping into an earthworm, gained the strength to lift a car by tapping into a spider, and he's ran ran at 75 miles per hour by adopting the abilities of an ant. But his abilities have done some even more surprising things, like, for example, when a villain cut Buddy off from any nearby animals, he took on the attributes of the bacteria inside that villain's body, allowing Animal Man to duplicate himself, and he can even tap into the attributes of extinct animals like dinosaurs, which has allowed him to punch out a T-Rex and survive being crashed into by a plane by borrowing the abilities of both a Stegosaurus and a rhino. And that's another thing, over time he's received power boosts that allow him to use multiple abilities at once, and then to even use the abilities of any animal in the universe, like when he used the power of a Sun Eater, which let him fly across the galaxy in an instant. He's even absorbed the powers of Krypto, Superman's superdog. Number 6. Aquaman. The ocean is a genuinely terrifying and interesting place. As such, the Atlanteans of DC Comics possess a few advantages over us regular humans. They have super strength, speed, endurance, and durability, all in order to help them survive the mind-boggling pressure at the insane depths of the ocean at which they live. But Aquaman himself is a royal Atlantean, which means that he is a super Atlantean. His strength and durability has allowed him to close the Marianas Trench, go toe-to-toe with powerful foes like Martian Manhunter, Lobo, and Wonder Woman, and tank blasts from Starro. His speed, which is often forgotten about, allows him to swim at 10,000 feet per second, and he can move even faster without the pressure or drag of water, allowing him to dodge bullets and catch lasers. But Aquaman has quite a few other advantages. His control over sea life has helped him in a large majority of his fights, with his underwater allies coming to his aid and helping him do things he probably couldn't do alone, like creating a massive tsunami with whales. His telepathic skill is actually quite impressive as well. Some of my favorite feats include him telepathically controlling a Green Lantern ring, reading the Martian Manhunter's mind without permission, and controlling a space dragon. Now, for a while he had a hand that was a hook and then became a magical mystical water hand that could do a whole other level of feats, but I'm out of time, so we're moving on. Number 5. Supergirl. It's funny, when I look up how powerful is Supergirl, I found more stuff about how she isn't more powerful than Superman, as if saying that Kara Zor-El is stronger than Kal-El is insulting their own masculinity. Kara is technically older than Kal is, and she also never learned to hold back, meaning she goes in with 100% effort. This made her appear to be much stronger than Superman when she showed up on the scene, but Superman has been absorbing the rays of our sun much longer, meaning he inherently has more power and more knowledge of how to use it, and his ancestry makes him just better than most other Kryptonians. That's the same reason, or part of the reason, why he was stronger than Zod. So now all the Superman stans can just like chill out for a sec. Supergirl has the potential to have all the exact same abilities that Superman does, but at a lower level, which still makes her insanely capable and one of the strongest beings in the universe. She has fought Barry Allen pretty successfully, obviously not trying to hurt him though. She put up a decent fight against Wonder Woman, though she still got kinda destroyed, and beat the snot out of Cyborg Superman, and then there is Power Girl, the Earth 2 counterpart of Supergirl, who seems to be even stronger. Number 4. Swamp Thing. Alec Holland was a chemist and botanist who spent most of his efforts creating a chemical formula that could increase the growth speed of plants and even let plants grow in abnormal places. Unfortunately for Alec, the lab he was working in was sabotaged and he passed away in the ensuing explosion and fire while running out into the swamp where his lab resided. Since his body was covered in the formula he created, his consciousness was absorbed by the plant life of the swamp. In a new human-like plant body, Alec rose as the Swamp Thing. Alec was now an earth elemental and avatar of the green, essentially a god of plants. With unimaginable levels of superhuman strength, durability, and inability to feel pain, regeneration from plant life, he can move at the speed of light, alter his size drastically, shapeshift to allow himself to have other abilities like flight, he can duplicate himself, has chlorokinesis or control over plants, which allows him to teleport through plant life, as well as, and thanks to his connection to the green, he can even move through time and possesses cosmic awareness. He's taken control of all the algae on Earth to remove most of Earth's oxygen in a show of strength. He's taken hits from and even restrained Superman and knocked the wind out of Wonder Woman. Swamp Thing is one of the more interesting heroes that DC has, and he deserves more respect on his name. Number 3. Black Adam. Whether you like it or hate it, Black Adam has been part of the Justice League. Black Adam has essentially the same base power that is possessed by Shazam, who made part 1 of this list, but for Black Adam, his ideologies and ruthless nature mean that he is simply much more capable than Shazam because he does not hold himself back. All we have to do to see how capable Black Adam is to take a peek at 2007's World War III event, or as I like to call it, Black Adam versus literally everyone. Black Adam single-handedly goes up against, beats the snot out of, and even takes the life of some of the combined forces of the JSA, the JLA, Captain Marvel, China's Great 10, the Phantom Stranger, Martian Manhunter, Power Girl, Wonder Woman, Stargirl, Plastic Man, Jay Garrick, several Green Lanterns, and more, all at the same time. And almost no one can take him down for the whole run of the comic. It's absolutely insane. Now, as for his whole inclusion in the Justice League, he was officially a member, but he also wasn't exactly good, which he never really is. We can discuss in the comments, but he is easily one of the strongest people to ever be a part of the Justice League. Number 2, Dr. Fate. I honestly thought Dr. Fate was just a part of the Justice Society and not the Justice League, but I was wrong, and I'll admit that. So, while he should have been in part 1, he is making part 2. Hate on me in the comments if you want, I literally don't care. One of the first magic-wielding superheroes ever, Dr. Fate debuted in 1940, way before Doctor Strange. Technically, Dr. Fate is a name used by the wearers of the Helmet of Fate, which was created by the powerful sorcerer Nabu, along with the Amulet of Anubis and the Cloak of Destiny. When Nabu passed away, his spirit was absorbed into these items, allowing him to live on through his hosts. Now, while Kent Nelson was the first, characters like Inza Kramer, Jared Stevens, Khalid Nassour, and a few others have wielded the powers of Dr. Fate throughout history, inhabiting the Tower of Fate and fighting magical threats. The Helmet of Fate itself grants the hero their vast magical powers, which include reality manipulation, matter manipulation, and time traveling, among many other abilities, plus the knowledge to cast spells that can do even more. And in at number 1, is Lobo. Lobo is basically what would happen if you took Marvel's Wolverine and Deadpool and smacked them together, added a pinch of the Punisher, and then made him as strong and tough as Superman and coated him in Gene Simmons face paint from the band Kiss. Now, as with all characters' feats, we need to take it with a pinch of salt, because this Zarnian in one story was able to take out the New Gods, who are all ridiculously powerful, but in the same story, he was captured and restrained by 3 Green Lanterns. He's been able to knock out Superman, regenerate himself from a pool of blood, has been deemed immortal and banned from both heaven and hell, he can track anyone he has met across the galaxy, is immune to psychic attacks, he's a genius, can break the 4th wall, can possess others, speaks 17,000 languages, can clone himself using his blood, can travel time and space with his motorcycle, and in one story, he literally takes out every single superhero, and man, he punched Santa's head off. That's just messed up. Lobo is almost completely unstoppable, and for some reason, he was very briefly part of the Justice League. Starting off our list at number 10 is Assassin Spider-Man. In What If Spider-Man vs. Wolverine number 1, we are introduced to Spider Assassin, a Spider-Man variant who is just a little bit more loose when it comes to the morals he follows. In his universe, with great power comes great responsibility and greater enemies, which led the Peter of Earth 8351 to leave New York City in order to protect his family from the villains who would make personal strikes. Instead, Peter joined up with Wolverine, and because of their time traveling and working together, he is much less opposed to sending criminals to the afterlife, meaning he does it on the regs. He's also almost always serious, not resorting to the usual quips and jokes that we are used to Peter using to cope with difficult or precarious situations anymore. His serious nature is also reflected in his costume, with a much darker look, especially with those black eyes. I really dig it. His web shooters have also been shown to shoot black webs in some panels, and they also include some more lethal means of dealing with his foes. He is an effective addition to the Spider Army when it was formed, and an extremely effective Spider-Man indeed. Number 9, the Spider. There are a lot of characters who go by the name of the Spider, including a pulp hero from way back in the day, but specifically, we are talking about a Peter Parker variant that's bonded with the Carnage symbiote coming from Earth 15. The Spider of Earth 15 is a much more sadistic, sociopathic, red-headed version of Peter Parker. He even claims that he has been sentenced to a total of, quote, 67 life sentences in prison for the crimes that he has committed. But of course, to make him just a bit more lovable, he has a sense of humor very much like that of Deadpool. It's great, if not a little unnerving. The Spider was introduced in Exiles number 12 and was a big part of the reality-saving Weapons X team featured in it. Being a sometimes leader of the team, as a Carnage-bonded sociopath, he was pretty powerful. But He was nonetheless sent to the afterlife by a blast from Firestar in Exiles number 44, because when you're dealing with the multiverse, there is bound to be someone stronger than you, no matter what you do and who you are. Number 8. Nightcrawler Spider-Man. Very recently, meaning this year, we have been introduced to the Sins of Sinister story arc, which is basically Mr. Sinister enacting a plan to take over the world and actually pretty much succeeding. There's a whole lot to this plan that kind of deserves its own point, but one part of his plan is using his cloning know-how to create chimeras. These essentially are spliced together versions of mutants and other heroes, so basically taking the already powerful mutant heroes and making them even more powerful by giving them a second power. There are some really cool mashups, but one of the spin-off comics from this event is X-Men Sins of Sinister Nightcrawlers. This comic features a team of spliced together Nightcrawlers who call themselves the Legion of the Night, and one of these splices puts the powers of Nightcrawler on a clone of Peter Parker. It's a blue-skinned man who can do whatever a spider can, but who can also bamf from place to place. And I never knew it was something I needed, but it definitely is. Nightcrawler never gets enough love in my eyes, and he's definitely one of the coolest of the X-Men. Unfortunately, I think Marvel knows how powerful this combo would really be, so they dispose of this chimera in a pretty lame way, but in my eyes, unstoppable. Number 7. Spider-Pool. Okay, I'll be honest, we have like zero information on this alternate Spider-Man. During the Spider-Verse, we were introduced to so many versions of Spider-Man that to go through each and every one in detail would have left us with no actual Spider-Verse story, and that story is dope, so no. But good golly, I wish for this one character they would have. First spotted in issue 9 of The Amazing Spider-Man from 2014 in a tiny little panel is an alternate Spider-Man wielding a katana. We see him again from the back in issue 14, and then we finally see a frontal view of this Spider-Man in issue 15 when the suspicions are confirmed. There for all to see is a Spider-Man who is also dressed with elements of the character of Deadpool. Surviving the war with the Inheritors that took the life of so many alternate versions of Spider-Man, of course he would make it through. We can assume that this guy has all the Spider-Man powers, but if he's also Deadpool, then this version of Spider-Man also has that god-level healing factor, and based on the katanas, he is just as okay with being a complete psychopath. While we have no idea about this Spider-Pool's name, story, powers, or personality, we can make enough guesses to know that this guy is incredibly capable and most likely unstoppable. Number 6. Takuya Yamashiro. Instead of being Peter Parker, the Japanese Spider-Man, Spider-Man, is Takuya Yamashiro, a motocross racer and son of astrophysicist Dr. Hiroshi Yamashiro. Unlike most versions of Spider-Man, Takuya was introduced through a live-action Japanese Spider-Man TV show, and with that, his character differs quite a bit. For starters, his spider powers are a little less powerful due to the budget constraints for the show, which is a hilarious reason, but don't you dare think that this makes this guy a pushover. To make up for his less powerful spider powers, Takuya has a massive kaiju fighting mech named Lepardon, Power Ranger style with arm rockets, an absolutely giant sword, and a boomerang. He uses Lepardon and his spider abilities to fight the Iron Cross Army, which is a group of suspiciously human-looking aliens from an unnamed world who are led by, wait for it, Professor Monster. Nice. Due to his popularity and just how awesome he is, Takuya Yamashiro has become an official character in the multiverse, coming from Earth 51778, fighting against the Inheritors alongside the Spider Army, and he is set to appear in the second animated Spider-Verse movie, which I am pumped to see. And at number 5 is Hulk Spider-Man. I don't have any problem constantly re-talking about this version of Spider-Man and the Hulk because it's freaking cool. Appearing in the Immortal Hulk with Great Power story, Peter Parker is granted the alter ego of the Hulk after Loki magically transfers the ability to him, taking it away from Bruce Banner. All the proportional spider powers mixed with the unstoppable force that is the green monstrosity of the Hulk. It's actually really cool. If not, a little silly to see the Hulk wearing a torn spider suit. And there are tons of hilarious moments in this story, like Spider-Hulk getting annoyed at the stupid sticky wall, which is just his wall crawling powers. Like, come on. Banner calls in the Fantastic Four with the hope of being able to fix the situation, and I personally wish they just left it so we could still have Spider-Hulk, but alas, the power of the Hulk is switched back to Banner with the help of the Fantastic Four and Banner's own genius. It's a short little story that seems almost self-contained, as if it is indeed an alternate universe story, but it's an insanely cool one, and a Spider-Hulk would be an an incredibly powerful character if he were to show up again and learned how to overcome the rage thing. Number 4. Ghost Spider. Spider-Gwen, or as she has come to be known, Ghost Spider, is the Gwen Stacy from the alternate reality of Earth 65. In this reality, it is Gwen Stacy, not Peter Parker, who is bitten by a genetically engineered super spider. This bite granted her superhuman strength, speed, toughened flesh, and pretty much all the spider-based powers that the regular Spider-Man would possess. Plus, in my opinion, she has the best looking spider suit. After Gwen is depowered by Cindy Moon during her self-titled comic, Ghost Spider bonds with the Venom symbiote, and successfully too. Gwen has actually learned to find a very healthy balance with her symbiote. The symbiote itself enhances whatever emotions the host has, right? So, when she first bonded with Venom, thanks to a corrupt Matt Murdock, Kingpin, who she was forced to team up with, she was rage-fueled and looking for revenge against the Rhino for attacking her father, and eventually against Murdock himself. But over time, she realized that she needed to control that and give Venom better qualities to enhance in order to control and find balance with the symbiote. In a way, Venom actually helped Gwen to become a better hero. She is another fan-favorite alternate spider hero, and as such has featured in tons of stories. But if you're looking for something to read where Ghost Spider is featured, I suggest Edge of Spider-Verse, where she first appeared, and her own self-titled comic series Spider-Gwen Volume 1 from 2015. Number 3. Spider-Ham. Hailing from a universe where all the Marvel characters are replaced with anthropomorphic cartoon character animal versions of themselves, Peter Porker, yes that is his real name, is Spider-Ham, a pig. Now Peter Porker was actually born a spider named Peter, and he lived in the basement lab of May Porker, a scientist who had created, quote, the world's first atomic-powered hairdryer. Using this atomic hairdryer, May accidentally irradiated herself, and in a weird fit of rage I guess, she bit Peter the spider, which made him turn into an anthropomorphic pig, just like her, only with the relative powers of a spider. In his premiere issue, he would go on to do battle with Hulk Bunny, created when Bruce Bunny was trapped in an arcade cabinet and bombarded with gamma radiation, and I wish I was making that all up, but it really happened. Spider-Ham has most of the same abilities as 616 Spider-Man, only he has this rather unique ability called Spider Nonsense, which basically allows him to be more and more cartoony the more danger he is in, which is the perfect reason to have the wackiest nonsense happen that will save this piggy's hide in some of the most imaginative ways possible. Cartoon powers are incredibly powerful, bordering on reality warping, so this is a pretty unstoppable little piggy. Number 2. Miles Morales. Born to an African-American father and a Puerto Rican mother, Miles Morales of the 1610 universe was bitten by the Oz-enhanced spider that caused him to pass out and foam at the mouth. When he awoke, he discovered he had powers. Cool! He would go on to become the next Spider-Man of the Ultimate Universe, and people love him. Miles Morales is an incredible character. He has almost all of the regular spider abilities, plus some amazing powers unique to himself. Namely, his venom, which is like a form of bioelectricity that he can emit from his body and use in some really cool ways, like punches and beams and blasts, as well as at long range using his webbing, and that ain't all. Miles is also able to use a spider camouflage to make his whole body, and even his clothes and costumes somehow, go invisible. And apparently, he is immortal, as a side effect of the Oz formula that contributed to his abilities. Also, similar to Ghost Spider Gwen Stacy, who Miles may have a bit of a romance with in this universe, Miles' suit is just dope as hell. And finally, in at number 1 is May Parker. Earth X. It's a world where basically every single person has powers, things have gone apocalyptic, and where the daughter of Peter Parker, May Parker, is Venom. While her retired and cynical pops ain't too thrilled about it, she does actually have complete control over the symbiote thanks to her advanced genetic and honed spider sense. She was eventually under the control of this kid going by the name of the Red Skull, and thanks to her father and other Earth X classic heroes, she was saved. This Spider-Woman / Venom hybrid and her father Spider-Man go on to join a super-powered police force and fight crime and supervillainy threats together. Nice. She eventually, after the death itself, gets recruited by Kang the Conqueror as part of a multiversal team to fight the Apocalypse Twins. In addition to her proportional spider powers plus the enhanced spider sense, she gains all the usual symbiote powers as well, plus a few extra, like what seems to be a rudimentary form of telepathy, and 'tis believed her symbiote could go on to mutate further to gain more powers, which is a good way for Marvel to say, we can do whatever we want with this. She's definitely one of the cooler incarnations of both Spider-Man and Venom to grace the pages of comics.